Hi, welcome to Yvonne Eats Food, where I share my passion for making food, eating food, as well as traveling the world to discover even more delicious food. In today's episode, we're going to be paying tribute to my paternal grandma, my nian, with one of my very favorite dishes she used to make every Chinese New Year, savory Chinese taro cake, also known as yutogao or utogao. Utogao is a rich, savory, flavor-packed cake that is commonly eaten during Chinese New Year and also at weekend dim sum. This will be a true labor of love, but take my word for it. This will be worth your effort and time, as homemade taro cake is unsurpassed and truly unforgettable. I hope my iteration of her infamous taro cake will make her proud, even if she is no longer with us. Chinese New Year dish that we're going to be making today is Chinese taro cake. In Mandarin it is called utogao, or in Cantonese it's called utogo. And so the meaning of that is just literally taro cake. And the word for cake in Chinese is gao in Mandarin. That also is kind of like a homonym for gao as in high or tall in Chinese. And because Chinese people are generally very superstitious, if you eat something with that name, it basically means that you'll rise higher in the new year. Taro is a really, really delicious root vegetable. I believe it originates either in South or Southeast Asia. It is usually like a white, slightly lavender, light purple color. It is very starchy, it is a little bit nutty, it's subtly sweet, and it's one of my favorite root vegetables for sure. So taro is going to be the base of the taro cake that we'll be making today, but it's not what you're thinking. It's not a sweet cake. This is actually a savory cake that is one of the traditional foods that you eat during usually the first 3 days of Chinese New Year to ensure that you're going to have a prosperous and higher year. And one of the things that makes it really delicious, well, there's actually a number of different ingredients that make it delicious. So there's usually different types of shiitake dried mushrooms. There's also Chinese bacon or Chinese sausage. And then there could be a variety of different types of dried seafood. So there could be dried scallops, there could be dried shrimp. My version has just the dried scallops because I'm a huge dried scallop fan, but every family kind of has their own recipe. And so this is kind of a riff off of a recipe that my grandmother used to make when I was growing up. And we're gonna go through all the ingredients that we're going to be using today. This is a very, very labor-intensive cake. There is lots of soaking, there's lots of chopping. This is definitely not for the faint of heart. So you either need to really, really love Chinese food or just love this cake to make it. So we're gonna get started right now. So to get started, we're gonna go through our mise en place. So of course, the core ingredient for this cake is gonna be the taro. So taro root, usually you can buy it at Asian grocery stores, either in the small sizes that are kind of like just a little bit bigger than the size of a golf ball. You can also get the bigger roots. So I usually buy the bigger root just because it's easier to peel. So you wanna peel it, cut it into small cubes of about 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick. And then you want to boil it in water until it's basically fork tender. And then once you're at that point, the color of the taro is going to start transforming. It's going to turn from a white to a very pale purple color. And that's what you see here. So I've already boiled this, drained this out, and so you can see here that it's pretty much well mashed up. We still got some nice chunks, which I like to leave in because I like that texture after the cake has been steamed. We also have to have a binder for everything that's in the cake. So we're gonna use rice flour. So if you are at the Asian or Chinese supermarket, there's usually a specific brand that I like to buy. It is always the red label one. Do not, under any circumstances, confuse this for the glutinous rice flour. This is plain rice flour. It's not glutinous. You do not want this cake to be sticky because if you get the green bag, it's gonna be a sticky hot mess and you don't want that. Next, we've got all those delicious savory fillings that I mentioned earlier. So we've got the lapchang, or the Chinese sausage. So you can buy these usually in the meat section in the refrigerator of Asian or Chinese grocery stores. They are very, very interesting in that if you're not used to having Asian sausages, you might be in for a surprise. They're a little bit sweet. They're definitely very savory, very, very umami. So you want to chop them up really finely. Then we're also going to use shiitake mushrooms, but not the fresh ones, we want the dried ones. So the reason that we use the dried ones is because the dried ones are very, very rich in flavor. So after they've been dried, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to soak them and rehydrate them in water. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna basically plump up the mushrooms so that you'll look at the dried ones, you'll look at the ones that have been rehydrated, and you'll think, oh wow, they like really plumped up because of the water. And then you're also left with the soaking liquid, which is also just rich in flavor. And so you're gonna save some of that soaking liquid for this cake. So nothing goes to waste in this recipe. We're gonna finely mince this so that it's just nice and small. So basically like little pea-sized pieces. And then the other thing that we're going to use as the main filling is going to be the dried scallops. Usually they will be behind the cash register. Reason being, dried scallops are basically like gold to Chinese people in that they are very, very expensive. They are not a cheap item to buy. They're usually behind the counter. You'll usually have to select which type of dried scallop you want in terms of the size. And then they're going to be priced by the weight. So I'm very lucky. My mom actually usually gets me a bag or two of these, usually like once or twice a year. This bag, if you can imagine, this is just full of dried scallops. This bag probably costs something like $50. That's a lot of money. It seems like, oh wow, this bag costs $50 seriously, but they're super pungent, they're delicious, they're definitely worth every cent that they cost. And so this is what they look like when they're straight out of the bag. But then once you soak them in water, usually I soak them in hot water for about half an hour before I'm about to use them, they plump up to about double the size. So you can immediately see how much bigger they become. And then the fun part, and the part that I always love about prepping them, is all you have to do once they've been rehydrated is you just want to crumble them in your hand. And they're gonna start becoming like kind of thready. They look like little threads. And each bite is just packed with seafoody umami flavor. It's so delicious, it's so good. They are pricey, so just to warn you that. So this is about 1/4 cup of the dried scallops. They are very thready, very stringy, as you can see here. Oh, they just smell like the sea though. They smell so, so good. Like I said earlier, we're gonna need the soaking liquids. So we've got about 1/3 cup of soaking liquid from the dried scallops, about 1/2 cup of the soaking liquid from the shiitake mushrooms. We're going to need some salt, a little bit of white pepper for seasoning, and then some scallions. So I've got about 6 scallions that I've finely minced here. And then lastly, in terms of equipment, you are going to need 8 to 9 inch cake pan, and make sure it has really tall sides. And the other piece of equipment that we're gonna need is of course a steamer. So to get started, we're gonna take those 2 cups of rice flour. We're basically gonna dump all the soaking liquids into this batter. Okay, party peeps. So we're gonna get our fillings all prepped. So I've already got my steamer going on this side. I've got my Dutch oven where we're gonna prep all the fillings. The first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna turn on the heat to medium. So we're gonna add in Chinese sausage. And then once that starts getting all crackly and crispy, that's the sign that we will add in the rest of the filling. So that'll be the scallions, the scallops, as well as the shiitake mushrooms. Ooh, thick. It's gonna be really thick, which is fine. We wanna incorporate the taro with all of these delicious fillings. Party peeps, it's time to put the cake together. So I've got this nice rice pudding-y type texture going on with this taro cake batter, and I'm gonna add it into our springform pan. I've got it already greased and ready to go. Little by little into this pan. Nice and thick, super fragrant. You can smell all the scallops and that amazing Chinese sausage in here. So I'm gonna add this to the steamer and we're gonna leave it in the steamer for about an hour. Welcome back. It is the next day and we have allowed our utogao or utoko or taro cake to rest overnight in the fridge. So we've given it a good amount of time to firm up. To cut the cake, we're just gonna quickly run a plastic knife around the edges. This is just my little hack to make sure that I'm not scratching the edges of my cake pan. And then I'm gonna release the springform pan on the side to make sure that we're gonna loosen up the cake and get it separated. So now I'm gonna show you how to cut this cake. So we're not gonna cut it into wedges like I said. We're gonna cut it into quarters. We're gonna take the knife and do kind of generous, maybe like 1/2 inch slices, and just keep cutting it like this. So 1 slice, 2 slice, 3 slice, 4 slice, and then on. So the pieces are not gonna be even because of that, but that is a traditional way of cutting up Chinese New Year type cakes. So we have the heat going, we've got a little bit of oil in our saute pan. So the more oil, the browner, the less oil, less brown. So I'm just gonna take each of these slices and put them on the pan. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It's nice and golden on the outside, it's kind of crisp on the edges. So my grandma always would serve this and make sure to garnish it with something fresh. So we're gonna use just a little bit of chopped up cilantro, and then also some scallions, because you can't ever have too many scallions. And there we go. So it's still steaming from the pan, so I'm just gonna take a bite. Mmm! This is so good. This totally tastes like home. It's like really warm and kind of like mushy on the inside because of the taro, so it's like soft and creamy. The outside, the edges are just nice and crisp because we just pan fried it. And you can taste all of the brininess of like the scallops, the umami-ness of the Chinese sausage, and those mushrooms on the inside, those dried mushrooms, they give really great texture to this. This is one of my faves. With all the Chinese New Year cakes, sweets, dishes, this is definitely on the top of the list. I love this and look forward to this every single year. This totally reminds me of my grandma. Really happy that I'm able to recreate a version of the utogao that she used to make. This is definitely something that is very labor intensive, and if you ever choose to make it, just know that you're gonna need to dedicate a good afternoon for all the soaking, the chopping, and all the effort that goes into it, but the effort is 100% worth the effort. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you next time. So thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.